So we're on page 44, right? Memory serves. So page 44, and we started yesterday with Laban having two daughters, and they represent the thought and the speech. Leah being thought, and it's called Amadit Kasya, the world that is concealed in the person, and we need to understand that much more because we only said very basic things about that yesterday. And Rachel represents the world of speech, and she's the Shechina. So when David HaMelech built the Beis Hamikdash, what he wanted to do was to give Rachel, to give the world of speech a manifestation in the world. So that's why all the nevuas, all the prophecies, and all the wise things that are said, they come through the Beis Hamikdash. It's a place of speech, and that's how Hashem also speaks to us. And we said one of the differences between the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash was that in the Mishkan only Moshe Rabbeinu heard it. In the Beis Hamikdash, since there's a mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel and Mitzvat Ra'ayon, so these and they're by everybody. So because of that, everybody came out of, especially from Sukkot, everybody came out with an understanding of what Hashem wanted from them. So it was like they heard the voice, they heard Hashem speaking to them in the Beis Hamikdash. There were many other manifestations. The moment the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, V'mirai B'nei Hamikdash. So this aspect of Rachel, the Shechina in Eretz Yisrael, went into exile. And it's interesting that it goes into exile with the Jewish people, meaning that it accompanies us wherever we go in the world. And yet at the same time, the sustenance that, this is the definition of what exile means. It means that the sustenance, the spiritual sustenance in the world, doesn't come through us directly, rather it goes through the Shivim Sarim, through the 70 ministers, the archangels of the various nations with which we, in the midst of which we dwell. And there's a very important thing about the speech that exile really means. There's a question that's asked by the Alter Rebbe. I think he asked it in Parshas Mishpatim, if I'm not mistaken, or Yitro. I don't remember exactly where. And then the Rebbe Moarash, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Moarash develops it in length, that it can't be. He says it's very difficult to understand that we went between the nations in order to add Gerim, to add converts, because it says there were so few converts throughout history. That how can you say that that was the reason? All this pain and suffering just to add a few people. Why didn't it just come? So he says no. That the real understanding is that the very fact that a Jew lives in a different country, and he makes his parnasa by speaking the language of that country, meaning he speaks in their language, and then afterwards he uses his parnasa to daven in Hebrew. That's what it means to add gerim to us, because that's what it means to be under the Mimshala of the Shivim Sarim, under the 70, because 70 years, like what do they call? We either call them Shivim Amim or Shivim Leshonot. Really, it's called the 70 languages. So really, when you look at it today, so I don't know how many languages there are today, and sub-languages and so on. But when you look at it today, there's more. It's very hard to distinguish how would you divide the population of the world into 70 nations. But I think it's probably a better approach to think about it in terms of languages. And by the way, this whole thing of there being 70 known languages, or 70 languages, comes also from the word chashmal. Chashmal means literally like electrum, like an expression, radiation. That's what electricity is. It's a form of radiation, it's a form of expression. So the word chashmal is divided always into two. It says that the chashmalim, a type of angels, what do? They speak and they're silent. At times they speak, at times they're silent. But their gift is that they have speech, like man. They're able to speak. So how do the Chazal divide it? The sages divide it: chash and mal. That at times they're quiet. That's the chash. Chash means to be quiet in Hebrew, and the mal, like milah, is to speak. So when you look at the gematria, it's very simple. They're really mal is equal to 70 languages. that are actually spoken. But in the background, there are 308 Chash languages that were never even revealed yet. So when the Jewish people go amongst the nations, it could be that they're also even working out the languages that are not spoken. It's like an unspoken language in every place. So in any case. So all this is related to Rachel. And Rachel is like the example of a speaker, of the power of a speech. But in Galus, she's Rachel bifnei gozazeh ne'elama. She loses the power of speech. The Shechina can't talk. And Shechina, we know that's the power of speech. Later in Tanya, in Igeres HaKodesh, in 25, where it discusses the Baal Shem Tov, and somebody asked a question about how the Baal Shem Tov said something, it doesn't make any sense, and so on. So there he gives a little bit of a dictionary. He says, the Malchus, Rachel, Heitata, all this is power of speech. This is all related to the power of speech.
So as the Jews go throughout the nations and they become natives of that language, they can disseminate the word of Hashem in the native language, and therefore bring Gerim that way.
Okay, so that's already a modern thing. They tried to explain it in the 1800s. Really what it means is just the very fact that you use the pranasa that you receive there, because the sustenance comes through them. But what does it mean spiritual sustenance comes from them? Only the physical sustenance comes. So it means that the Jew makes his parnasa there, and then he goes to daven or to learn Torah in Hebrew. And then that's the ger, that's the convert, as if. Okay. So now he says, so the problem is that in Eretz Yisrael, in the time of Golus, there's no Rachel, there's no Shechina. The Shechina isn't here. Again, another example is that the Shechina is talking out of Moshe's throat. The Shechina is the power of speech. So looking at Kaf Gimel, on the top. Oh, so that's the question. אך לפי שהוא עלמא דהתכסה ולם, לכך אין הגילוי אלוקות עכשיו בארץ ישראל, מערך הגילוי שהיה בזמן בית המקדש קיים. So because it's alma d'Itkasya and it's hidden, so in order to reveal it, it's not that the mind doesn't reveal Hashem, but it's much less revealed. It's much harder to reveal it because it's a world of concealment in the thought. So he says, because Leah, who's the world of concealment, the world of thought, is still present in Eretz Yisrael, so you can't say that there's no divine presence at all, but this divine presence is from Leah. And because of this, it's very hard, he says, to come to a realization, to a revelation of Hashem in Eretz Yisrael during the Golus. There's this famous story that Reb Nachum of Chernobyl wanted to make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. And he came to the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov said, why do you want to go there? So he said, because the Shechina is there. So the Baal Shem Tov said, don't go. So he tried again and again to convince the Baal Shem Tov over a few years to let him go. He was still younger then. And every time the Baal Shem Tov said, why do you want to go? He says, because the Shechina is in Eretz Yisrael. Eventually the Baal Shem Tov told him, just go to the mikveh now, tavel 10 times. So again, this was in the Baal Shem Tov's time. So he taveled 10 times. And the 10th time he heard a voice. And it said to him, Aron veluchot b'mezibush. Said to him that the ark and the luchos, they're in mezibush, meaning that they're worth a nasi of the generation. They're really, if you're looking for the Shechina went out in exile. It doesn't suddenly appear back in Eretz Yisrael. So where is it? It's the place from which you hear the dach, where you hear the divrei Elokim Chaim. Then it makes sense. You're hearing the Shechina speak out of the Rebbe's voice. So it says if the Rebbe now is the Baal Shem Tov and he's in Mezibush, so that's where the Aaron and Luchos. Why the Aaron and Luchos? Because that's where Moshe Rabbeinu heard the voice from. He heard it from between the Kruvim and the Aaron. מכל מקום, הצדיקים הגדולים אשר בארץ יכולים להשיג עכשיו בארץ ישראל השגות עליונות יותר, אפילו מה שהשיגו צדיקים כמותם מזמן הבית. But because the power of speech is quiet and it doesn't disturb you as a work and you're not involved in expressing, so the great tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael in this time, they can attain higher levels of understanding than they could even in the time of the Beis Mikdash. And that's the Ari's answer to the very prominent question of how can it be that you revealed more than Moshe Rabbeinu knew. How can that be? So then there's a Holy Geras HaKodesh that explains it, but the idea is that even though we're on a lower level spiritually, but we're hearing from the Bina, we're hearing from Leah. And we're not hearing from Moshe Rabbeinu, what he understood from the Torah. The understanding came through the speech. And the speech is only the Malchus. And we understand from the understanding, from the Bina. And so says the Arizal, because of that, I can understand things that Moshe Rabbeinu even couldn't, or David HaMelech couldn't, or whoever was in Eretz Yisrael at that time couldn't. Ukmo Arizal, so Mama, she's quoting from the Arizal. כמו אריזל שהשיג השגות עצומות מה שלא השיגו צדיקים גדולים בדורות הקדמונים. Like the Arizal, who had great revelations, great understanding that even the tzaddikim of the previous generations who were in Eretz Yisrael weren't able to receive. And that's why he came to Eretz Yisrael, because he came to Eretz Yisrael to be with Leah. So really what it's saying is that the world of Torah continued to be here. Okay, but the world of Torah in the sense of somebody who is perfect when it comes to the world of speech. The world of speech is a world of Asiyah. So if his actions anyway were perfected already, so he came here, so he was able to receive here a higher understanding than he was in Chutz La'aretz. But if he comes here and his action is not perfected, then he actually falls down here because Rachel isn't here. Meaning to be a frum Jew is much harder in Eretz Yisrael when Rachel isn't here, and it is to be in Chutz La'aretz next to a Rebbe who has a B'china of Eretz Yisrael with him, meaning the B'china of the Shechina.
This was true in the 1800s. Is what
I think it's 100% true today. But today, meaning it's the strongest, simplest explanation for why people came here and they stopped being frum. This happened to so many people, and the Rebbes were against it. They said, if you come here, you will lose everything that meaning a simple Jew finds it very hard. Baruch Hashem, today the tide is turning already. But it's still not turning, it's still just cultural. It's not like that, meaning there's an openness now. Culturally, there's an openness. But it's still not a feeling that we have a duty to perform in this world. It's not what the culture is radiating. It's not what it's not the atmosphere. The atmosphere is that it's nice to, Judaism is very nice. It's nice to have. It's a lifestyle. But it's not the feeling of a duty. So I don't care if a person does it out of love, does it out of fear, it doesn't matter as long as he feels that he's connected to Hashem. So that's changing, but it's not Rachel. It's not Rachel in the sense that you have a duty to do. So a lot of people, when they came here, they lost their Yiddishkeit. So it's a big question about whether they lost it already in Chutz La'aretz, or they lost it when they came here.
Was it real to begin with? If they could lose it here?
Duty is always, in a certain sense, not real. Duty is always something that you assume or you take on yourself because you understand its meaning. It doesn't mean that a person is a religious person. Religious people, there's very few in the world. Religious people is people who have a religious sentiment. Not everybody has a religious sentiment. In fact, I think maybe 5% of the population has a religious sentiment, meaning a homo religioso, as they call it in the world, which means that the person is always seeking something spiritual. He's also always seeking something beyond the material world. Not everybody is like that. Most people do things because they feel that this is their culture, this is their tradition, this is nice to have. It's interesting, maybe, if they learn Torah. It's interesting, it's deep, it's this, it's that, but it's not a yearning, it's not a religion. So the Torah comes and says, Ve'ahavta. Even if you don't have this religiosity ingrained in you, if you learn Torah, you'll come to some level of experiencing this religiosity. You'll come to this feeling of wanting to unify with Hashem. But it's not natural for most people. Some people, they can't. That's a tzaddik. A tzaddik is like a person who can't be any other way. Wherever you throw him, he'll end up searching for Hashem, because that's how he is. He can't live any other way. But most people are not that way. So I don't know if whether it was true or not true is the right. I mean, there was a structure. There was a social structure in Chutz La'aretz that worked for a long time. They say that in Russia it fell completely because of communism. They said that the damage was done because of communism, not because people came to Eretz Yisrael. That by the time the Iron Curtain came down, it didn't come down on almost anybody. Because everybody had been convinced in the previous generation that communism was the most important thing in the world, socialism was the most important thing in the world, and people left Yiddishkeit because of this ism. So that's the thing we heard here from the Shaliach in Kamenetz. You were here when he said that. He says he's gone through a lot of the old documents. Wherever he goes, he goes to the town hall, whatever they have there still. Yeah. And he wants to see how many Jews were from in each place. And he says by 1925, this is almost nobody was from. The numbers were nobody identified as a Jew anymore.
Wow, that was quick.
Ken, he says it took a few years. It's unbelievable how it spread like wildfire.
From 17 to 25?
Ken, no, it started before because communism started in the early 1900s.
Okay,
but it took over when there was a chance after World War, at the end, towards the end of World War I. Okay. So what about Yaakov here? What's his role? So why did Yaakov in the end hate Leah? Well, Yaakov is not connected to the world of thought. He's only the world of speech. Certainly, Yaakov was also connected to Almadit Kasya, to thought. But Yaakov, his role is to bring down light from the Ein Sof. It's called Bariach HaTichon, the middle rod, or what do you call it?
Branch of the Surah?
Bariach really, where's it from? It's from the Mishkan. The Mishkan, each one of the three walls that made up the Mishkan, the front was just a curtain. The three walls that made up the Mishkan. So each one was made out of sections of wall, made out of wood. Panels. So the panels had rods going through them to connect them, to make them into one. So there were actually 5 rods for each wall. So there's 2 rods from above and 2 rods from below, and then 1 in the middle. The difference was that why were there 2 from each side on top and bottom? Because they only went halfway. They didn't go all the way. It wasn't 1 rod that went all the way through. But the Bariach HaTichon, the middle rod, it went all the way from the first panel to the last panel. So, and that's called the Bariach HaTichon Mavriach Min HaKatzeh LaKatzeh. So this is taken and used to describe Yaakov, who is Tiferet, who's on the middle axis of the Sfirot. And that the middle axis of the Sfirot is different from the other axes, meaning that it's continuous all the way from above to below. So anywhere that you touch it, wherever it is, you immediately connect to the Ein Sof. So that's how Yaakov is. אז יעקב נקרא בריח התיכון המבריח מן הקצה לקצה, פירושו הממשיך אור אין סוף ברוך הוא מן הקצה העליון, היינו הקו הבוקע החלל, כמו שמבואר במקום אחר, מבחינת כתר למטה. ולכן נאמר בו תוספת ואלוהיקי יעקב. So he says his duty, his work, is to bring the Ein Sof, the infinite, down, all the way down to Malchus. And he's a description of the Kav. When Hashem created the world, first he created an empty space, and then he introduced the Kav Or Ein Sof, the ray of infinite light that comes into the world. So Yaakov, he's this Kav, and his continuation, for instance, is Yosef. And from Yosef it goes down to Malchus. Where's Malchus? Malchus is also in the middle. So all these things are connected as one. Who's Malchus? We said that's Rachel. But Leah, she's Bina. She's not on the middle axis. So she's somewhere else. So it's not that he has an understanding of a concealed mind, but the concealed mind that he's connected to is Dafka, the concealed mind of Keter. In Keter, there's also a mind, but it's not the Bina. It's not the regular Bina. So we need more to explain this, but we'll see in a moment. Everything he brings down, that's why he says he has an extra vav. The vav is a siman of amshacha, like we saw last week, shemot ka shemot. So the amshacha, the bringing it down, the infinite, the experience of the infinite, can only come down through the middle axis. And that's Yaakov's word. So that's why we say, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, there's no vav, and then Ve'elokei Yaakov. That extra vav. And also there's another extra vav. Sometimes Yaakov, there's 5 times that Yaakov is written with a vav. Mamash written with a vav. So these this is Yaakov's role, that he's through down the middle axis. And because he's down the middle axis, so he says, וכן והנורא, שמכן מחבר חסד וגבורה על ידי המשכות והרת העין, והיינו על ידי בחינת ביטול. And all these are done through ביטול. וכל המשכות שלו עד קצה התחתונה, דהיינו בבחינת מלכות על מדי התגליה. So what he's yearning to do is bring the revelation of the infinite down into the malchus, into the lowest sphere. So that's what he aims to do in his life.
From Keter straight through to Malchus.
He wants to bring the Ein Sof, the experience of the Ein Sof, down into Malchus.
So for him, should be a given that the thought is a higher than speech.
But something he knows that it's higher. But what is he yearning for? What's his drive?
Speech.
To come to Malchus, to come to speech. זהו ויאהב יעקב גם את רחל מלאה, שכל תשוקתו היה להיות גילוי אור אין סוף ברוך הוא למטה בעל מדי התגליה. So that's why Yaakov loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. Still doesn't say why he hated Leah, but he explains why he loved Rachel. Because the moment that he saw Rachel, and she represents a world of speech for him, he feels that here I will be expressed. In a certain sense, it's like the difference between if you're in a situation where you feel that you're being enabled positively, or whether you're being challenged. In a certain sense, you're being challenged. If a person is challenged in a way that we'll see. I'm saying a little bit ahead, but if a person we'll start with Rachel. If he's being enabled positively, meaning that he's in an environment that is constantly encouraging his expression the right way
to grow.
So of course he wants to be there. He feels that this is the right place, this is the right fit. So he loves Rachel because he feels right away, he has this innate connection that he feels that here, with this woman, I will be all that I can be. She feels that I can bring the experience of the Ein Sof into the world. I can bring an experience of the infinite into everything that I do. All my expressions will be infinite in nature. And how did he recognize it? He says right away, he felt this bittul. Where do we see it? That he was able to move the stone. You can't move that stone if you have no bittul. He saw the power of the Ein Sof suddenly come into him. That he had this, he just saw her and he was filled with the experience of the Ein Sof. He felt this bittul to Hashem that he had never felt before, not this powerful. And if until now it was only to prevent him from sleeping when he was with Shem and Ever, so he didn't sleep for 14 years. But so that's like it's like a remez. It's like a yad. He had 14 years of not sleeping, which is a crazy feat. And it means really that he never slept for more than half an hour straight. So he didn't sleep a whole night. That's what it means. He never slept a whole night. But now he sees it not in the retracting from the world, which is one way to experience the Ein Sof. It's like to go higher. Now he suddenly feels that I have it in my hands, mamish in my hands. I'm able to move this incredibly heavy rock that only many, many people together can move. And it's over the well, and suddenly he has this strength. So he sees that Rachel gives him, she's enabling him in the best way to experience this power of Ein Sof. She's making him into a superhero, if you want. So right away he falls in love with her, that this is where I need to be. ולכן, sorry, I think I skipped.
And he sees Leah as a challenge?
He doesn't see her yet. Leah was supposed to marry Esav in the first place. He never meant to even marry her. Meaning, you might say that the person who needs an Ezer kenegdo, somebody who is against him, who's going to challenge him, is Esav. But Yaakov is a tzaddik, so he needs an Ezer, not kenegdo. He needs somebody who will be with him, not against him.
No, because you said one's going to be an enabler and one's going to be a challenge.
We didn't talk yet.
Right.
You sort of jumped ahead with what Leah's going to do. שעל-ידי זה יוכלו הכל לקבל. And when he says, when I reveal myself, my power, my infinite power in reality, So everybody will be able to receive from it. Everybody will see what it means that the Ein Sof is revealed in a person. Which is not going to happen with Amadit Kasa, because there, even if I do have an infinite power, the revelation of the infinite, it'll be only in thought. And thought is not revealed to a person, meaning a person can understand a tremendous amount and not be able to express it. To be able to express is the world of speech. It's a different power entirely. That's why we know that there are people who are geniuses, but they have no ability to actually transfer their knowledge to somebody else. They don't have that ability to go through the tzimtzum needed to actually say it. Because it's a completely different world. It's a world of speech. Okay, and that's where the Holy Spoon starts from. The fact that you see that there's a tremendous discrepancy between a person's ability to articulate himself and how much he understands. Sometimes you have both powers in a single person, and then you think they're related. But a lot of times you see the person who's very articulate and is a complete idiot. And there's a person who's a mamash genius but has no ability to put his thoughts into words and to actually transfer them to somebody else. You feel this incredible thing. You feel that behind what he's stuttering with or what he's struggling with is tremendous understanding. But Hashem hasn't opened his mouth. And Moshe Rabbeinu was like that in the beginning, right? He has tremendous understanding of the infinite, but he's not able to express it. So in the beginning, Aaron does it for him. ולכן כתיב וישק יעקב לרחל על דרך שנקוד על וישקהו. So something when Esav kisses Yaakov, it says Vayishakeu, or Laban kissing Yaakov.
Kisses.
So he kisses him and he's groping around to see whether he has something in there. So he kisses Rachel in the same meaning. דהיינו שבחינת חב"ד שהוא זיווג נשיקים והתהפכות רוחה ברוחה על דרך משל הנשיקים שבאים מפנימיות האהבה וגם בחינה זו המשיך ברחל. So he says that there's two types of zivug, there are two types of coupling between male and female in the world. So the one type of coupling is spiritual, and the type of coupling is more physical. Again, even in the spiritual realm, there's more spiritual and more physical, more connected more to something that's physical. So the nishikin, a kiss, comes from pnimius ahava, which comes from the inner aspect of love. It's not the physical form. Meaning, when you kissed her there, it wasn't in order to express a romantic kiss. It was to express the connection between them. It's called davgut rucha berucha. It's one mind connecting to another, and it's specifically done with the moichin, with Chabad. The Chabad in one person, with the Chabad in another person. Anyway, that's why the angels come from zivug neshikin also. Same thing. There's not a physical body that goes with it. וזהו שכתוב, ועבדך 7 שנים ברחל בתך הקטנה, כי לבן הוא בחינת לובן העליון. מקור החסדים, שכולו רחמים פשוטים, זה לעת שמאלה והעתיקה. כשלמטה נשפל בלבן גשמי. ומכל מקום כתיב כולו הפך לבן טהור, ואפילו הנגע, והלבן טיב, והשכם לבן בבוקר, שבכל יום מתגבר ונמשך אור החסד עליון. So, in any case, what was going on here? That he said to Laban, "I'll work for 7 years." Because what did he want? Why dafka 7? Because he wants from Rachel to build lower worlds, the 7 sfirot of lower worlds, meaning of influencing the world. So he says, "I'll work for you for 7 years." What he didn't know was that he was going to switch with Leah, so he was really building 7 sfirot that he wasn't ready for. Rizal says it's from Keter to Shlish Tiferet, to 1/3 of Tiferet. It's all technical. But really, what it means is he was sure that by working for Laban, he was setting up that his marriage with Rachel would give birth to these 7 midos that would come out of their union. Why? Because Laban here, he also represents something very important, which is called Loven Elyon, which is the higher whiteness, I guess you call it, higher purity. Laban means white. So he's the Loven Elyon. What's this Loven Elyon? Mekor Chasadim. It's really the higher part of the Keter. What's the Keter? The Keter is like the Gulgolet. In general, if you want to say what's the Keter in the person, if there's a physical aspect to it, usually we say it's the crown above the head. But when the Rizal, that's the whole Rizal's big chap, is that he explains the Idra, the two Idrot that weren't explained before him. And two sections in the Zohar that are considered to be the deepest sections, called Idra Rabba and Idra Zuta. And in the Idra Rabba, I think it's the Idra Rabba, I hope it's not the Idra Zuta, I have to check it again. So in the Idra Rabba, the Rizal explains how the Keter works. And he anthropomorphizes the Keter. He gives it a mashal, he gives it a parable that's physical. So where is the Keter? It's the Gulgolet. It's the skull. So when you say Loven Elyon, when you say the higher whiteness, the supernal whiteness, so what is supernally white in the person? So it's the Gulgolet. It's the skull.
The bone, the actual bone.
The bone, as it were. Okay. And so the bone of the head, that's considered to be the high, that symbolizes the Keter. If there's anything in the body, like in the same way that people are used to saying the Chesed is the right hand and the Gvur is the left hand. So if there's any part of the body that's how the Zohar says it, that's how Rashbi explained it. But somehow the Keter is the Gulgolet. And now you have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So the Keter is the source of all the chasadim that come down, all the loving kindness that comes down. And the idea is that it's the source of all hashpa, the source of all emanation that comes down. And Laban, what represents that? So again, it's like, how could that be? How can you say that a person who's this
thief, robber?
He's mamash the worst scoundrel there is. So how can he be the Loven Elyon? So he says that really he just wants to give. He's all chamim pshutim. It's really, and there's no even gvura in it. That only when it is reflected down here, this was Yaakov's greatness, that he saw this. And again, this is a common theme in the Chassidus all the time, that even when you encounter somebody who's negative, who's very, very bad, you have to understand that the reason that they're so negative is because they fell from a high place. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean that you have to treat him like a tzaddik. Yaakov doesn't treat him like a tzaddik at all. He in Laban Gauti, like he temporarily assumes the same way that Laban acts. Even though he didn't learn from it, he didn't change himself, but he learned how to deal with Laban. He dealt with him in his own hand. So it doesn't mean that you have to treat them like they're a tzaddik, but you have to understand that everything that you're going through, all the difficulty that you're going through with them, is really a symbol for gaining something much higher, from a higher source, because the higher source can't reveal itself in your life directly as a tzaddik. You're very fortunate if you can. But the truth is that with a tzaddik, you wouldn't really have to deal. You wouldn't really have to go through any difficulties. It would just flow very easily. Another example is that when Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Paro, so Zohar says that Paro, he's the source of all lights. He's also a type of Keter. All the lights come out of Paro. Paro means to open something wide, like we do Priya on the Milah, on the circumcision. So he's a symbol. So in general, that's how a chassid looks at things. He says if there's a difficulty here, it's not because I have to just suffer, but I should know that what I'm going through is only in order to open something up from a very high place. And the suffering here, down here, is just because something that's very high, if I'm not worthy of it yet, it comes down to something negative. That's the only way it can appear in my life. It's something very gas, very grob. I don't know how to say gas. Coarse. Gross.
So it's really perspective. It's a perspective.
Okay, it's understand that. So he saw that. He saw that Laban, he's a slimy customer. And dealing with him is really dealing with the Keter Elyon, with the highest part of the Keter. And even, and there's an example of it, he says, there's even an example of it down here, that tsaras is considered to be a very difficult disease. It comes because a person sinned. He said lashon hara, whatever, and it's white. But what happens if the entire person becomes white? So then he suddenly becomes tahor. Why? Because now he's completely reflecting, meaning the problem is the mixture. There's a little darkness there and a little whiteness there. The mixture gives you a hint that it's not completely what it seems to be. But the moment that it becomes pure white, then it's already reflecting, because that's not a human being anymore. Like a person who would be from head to toe covered in tsaras, it's already not a human being. He's something else. There was a famous Rebbe, I don't want to mention his name, who at the end of his life he had a skin disease that didn't let him wear clothes. He went through successive stages. First he wore just very delicate garments from silk. And then he had to take that off. And eventually he had to be naked. He couldn't wear anything at all. So another famous Rebbe came to see him. And saw him and he cried. So he said, "Who do you think I am?" And he asked the other Rebbe that was crying, "Who do you think I am now?" So he thought of it, and then he said, "You're Adam Arishon before the Chait."
Wow.
So, because it's like not, it's ois mensch. It's like it's not being a human being anymore. So he's revealing something that's not from this world. It's a terrible situation, but it already isn't like part of reality. So that's what he says, that you can even find whiteness that's beyond this world, and then in a tsaras, and then it becomes all pure. It's like he doesn't need any more. He doesn't need to be cleansed of it at all. Okay. So I think that's as far as we can get to right now. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow.